everyone, and a warm welcome back to the Corporate Sustainability Education channel. We are your weekly series of education podcasts. We put a new one out for you every Friday, and we're powered by the Southern Sustainability Partnership. Now, when we launched these podcasts, we didn't really mind where anybody was in the corporate sustainability strategy. We just wanted to know we had your back. So some weeks ago, we enlisted the immense knowledge of Judith Ward, who is from a company called Worldwide Wastewise, a leading training provider. They're based in Dorset, England, UK. Now, Judith is a chartered waste manager with the Chartered Institute of Waste Management, which we'll get into in a little bit. And she is also a NEBOSH and IOSH certified trainer. Now, we felt the next step from staff engagement with Judith is what's known as the Waste Smart training module that looks at managing your resources sustainably in the everyday decisions and actions that your business makes. And Judith is one of the UK's leading experts who take businesses of all size and type through this Chartered Institute of Waste Management accredited training series. Judith, we're lucky to have you find a window to join us again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Linda. It's nice to be here again, actually, though I think you've given me quite an introduction that I'm not sure I'm going to live up to, but we'll see how that goes.
You did last time, so I'm all faith in you, Judith. Okay, so let's start then. Waste Smart Training is accredited through the Chartered Institute of Waste Management, also known as CIWM. So for those who follow the channel that are not aware of who CIWM are, can you just give us a summary of what this body is for businesses?
Okay, well, I've been a member of CIWM since the year 2000, actually. It's our professional body that represents anyone working in the waste industry. So it's not just about managers, it's not people running waste to energy plants, landfill sites, that side of things. It represents everybody, and that includes people streets cleaning, picking up the municipal waste, driving a dust cart, street sweeper, anybody who actually handles waste. It could be porters, it could in the hospitals, anyone. And it is essentially a great source of information. They have an online forum which people can post questions on, and that has become really popular. It launched in lockdown, actually, and anyone can post any question, and people within the industry just post answers back. So that's invaluable, actually, if you just want a second opinion, you're the only one in a company dealing with waste. They offer training courses. I get a monthly magazine, and you can get that either online or you can get a paper version. They set up special interest groups. They do a lot of webinars, and that's been really good for continual professional development for me, because it means I don't have to travel halfway around the country. And they used to do something called New Generation Group. That's now being looked at again, but there are regional meetings for people to get to, and they're usually on sites which you can visit, like AD plants, council depots, all sorts of things, to see examples of best practice. So it's great, actually. So and that's why, I mean, I've been a member a long time, but that's why we do the Waste Smart course. It's an accredited course, and it is you get a very nice certificate. It's nationally recognised.
Yes, I think CIWM, certainly in the history that I've been working in this industry sector, is so highly regarded. So, if you are a company that feels like, we're on our own on this journey, you're certainly not. Become members of organisations like this. There's so much help out there. And I love the fact that you alluded to this new resource that they've come up with to help people through lockdown. I hear this time and time again, and I think, aren't we so resilient? And it's so great that this has probably now come up with something that they'll continue to do like other organisations have. And it just is another fantastic platform to help companies.
There's different platforms as well to join as well. So people can join as students. People who's got an interest in waste just can join as an affiliate member, and you can work your way up to being an associate, chartered, and a fellow. So there's a real structure to it as well. And, so it's for everybody.
That's great, because it's not, I'll join this and then feel like you're a fish out of water. Actually, you can dive in right at the point where it suits your organisation, and and step by step become more knowledgeable. Yeah, that's fantastic. So Judith, I know the answer to this question is really going to be slightly different depending on the size of company. But before we begin to drill down into the Waste Smart course itself, can you give us an idea of who, maybe in your opinion, within a company, should really get involved and make themselves available for this course?
Well, I think it's such a ubiquitous course that anybody can get involved. The people that I have trained have gone into various companies, composting companies, councils, that side of things, to give the Waste Smart course. It tends to be people who've got an environmental role within a company, because unfortunately, certainly for small companies that have somebody who wears a number of hats, they usually have a she role, a safety, health and environment role. If a company is looking to expand their sustainability option, it tends to get the person who's got environment in their name, in their job, gets landed with it. So those sort of people. But other people I've trained have been porters for the NHS and cleaners. I've done facilities managers on university campuses, very different teachers. I did Tops nurseries locally because they've got a very good reputation. The lead is very interested in environmental issues and sustainability. So she wanted her staff training. So it's about giving people who are at the coalface when dealing with waste within a company extra knowledge. But having said that, it really could be for anybody, and actually it should be for everybody within a company, because, and we'll talk later, it's about participation in getting people on board.
Yes, and I think if you are an SME, maybe you are quite a small business, the end result to this is going to be probably you're going to reduce the cost of running your business. So you should want to get involved and find out a little bit more about how you can do that, just for that reason alone, not just because of the environment.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
Judith, the Waste Smart training programme is specifically designed to help employees consider resources and waste in everything that they do within the company in order to have a positive impact. So can we now talk through the specific areas that Waste Smart will cover, and perhaps then start with looking at waste as a resource?
Yeah, this is the foundation course. There's 2 levels for Waste Smart. The foundation course has 5 modules. The advanced course has 8 modules, including the 5 modules from the foundation and the 3. So I can talk you through the foundation to start with. That waste as a resource that you mentioned is very much a starting point. It's designed to get a bit of change of mind, and the mindset is with people is waste, and you put your waste into a bin, it gets collected and off it goes, out of sight, out of mind, and no one gives it a second thought. This module is aimed at looking at it very much as a resource in its own right. It's not just to be thrown away. It could be thought about in a much more in-depth way. What further life can you get out of it? So it kind of concentrates on physical resources that are discarded at any stage in the business process. It deals with understanding waste, because unless you understand what waste you're producing, how you classify your waste and that side of things, you can't manage it. It's about controlled waste under the Environmental Protection Act as well, and tends to focus on industrial and commercial waste. So it's ideal for businesses. And it really does introduce the concept that most waste has a potential as a resource, e.g. like methane gas out of a landfill site, for example. It's not the final product, is what I'm trying to say. It's can go into other things, combined heat and power plants, for example. We deal with how segregated materials have more value, and so businesses can separate their waste and get a better value for it, better market opportunities for it and things. So it's really starting point is that first module.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that your waste can, may not actually be the end, there off it goes, and it's actually cost you to get rid of it. It could in itself have a value, which is another thing that gives us real goosebump moments about when we look at things like this. It's fascinating. So how far do you drill down then into the environmental impact of waste?
Well, first of all, it acknowledges that how much waste we produce inevitably has an impact on the environment. We look at, there's a great phrase that comes out of the course called an ecological rucksack. which I really like. And it's about hidden baggage, actually. So if you take the idea of a toothbrush, for example, you're not just throwing away a toothbrush, but everything that's gone into making it. So we're talking material extraction, processing, manufacturing it, and use, and then the final disposal, sort of there's a general phrase that most people know, which is cradle to grave. So you look at that environmental footprint that toothbrush has made. And that's what a lot of people don't get, is that they throw things away and they go, oh, it's just a toothbrush. Oh, it's just, you know, a bit of paper. It's this, that, and the other. And they forget everything that's gone into actually making it, all that energy, you know, and transportation and things. So, you know, it examines that. We also look at, quite frighteningly, just how much we're getting through. You know, they reckon that as a planet, we are getting through, at the moment, the rate of we're getting through materials is 3 planets worth. So we discussed the question, like, where the hell the other 2 planets are coming from, you know, and it's just not sustainable. We're currently borrowing from future generations with regards to our resources. There's something that they call the Earth Overshoot Day, which is basically about where humanity's exhausted nature's budget for the year. And this year was July the 29th. So anything that we're using now, as August the 2nd, we're already into our, 3rd day of borrowing from generations in the future. So that's clearly not sustainable. So, you know, we're looking at the aspects of, we've become a throwaway society. I mean, my parents lived through a war. They were very much of a generation of make, do, amend. And I have to say, I do get a lot of stick from my friends, but I do darn my socks and things like that sort of thing, you know, because you just think, well, the rest of it's okay. It's only got a small hole. Let's just mend it, you know, and we've changed that mentality. You know, there's a lot of product design. There's a lot of clever people out there that have designed products that actually can't be fixed. You know, in the old days where your washing machine went wrong, and if it was the bearings that went, you took out the drum and could mend everything that was behind that drum. And nowadays, those sort of products are sold with a fixed drum, so you can't get near it. So, you know, that's being addressed, actually. And it's interesting that the French have already started legislation with the right to repair, being with all their, you know, a lot of their electrical products and things. So that's worth keeping a ticking eye on as well. We then talk about the actual environmental impact, and we're really starting to see it now. All these fires that are in the news at the moment, we've got global warming, you know, there's floods, deforestation, there's mineral oil extraction, you know, there's even food waste that's if councils aren't collecting food waste going into landfill sites generates methane. So, and that's a landfill gas, and that's a greenhouse gas, and that contributes to global warming. So we're starting now to see some real changes in weather patterns and things where countries have had sustained periods of very high heat, and we've got fires as a result of it.
Yeah, we've really lost sight, I believe, in what things are actually worth, the value of something that's being manufactured, because we took manufacturing to where it could be done cheaper. And so now I hear this word all the time, that's not very cheap, is it? That's expensive. Oh, you know, that.
Yeah.
You think,
yeah.
At what price is it cheap? You know, and maybe if we valued more the actual cost of something, maybe we could buy closer to home and that would have better impact, etc. So
Yeah.
when we say, you know, at what cost, also I know that the course covers the cost of managing waste, which for some organisations is immense. But I guess it depends, you know, whatever size of your company, getting rid of that waste is relevant to the money that you're probably actually able to make. So it's the same for everyone. It's expensive.
Well, absolutely. And it's very interesting, you know, when I go into companies and I start this conversation with them about how they can do, you know, better things, more clever things, more sustainable things with their waste and things. You ask them how much their waste is actually costing them, and they have no idea. And yet you ask them costs about other things, and they can down it to the second decimal point, you know, and you just think, okay. And a lot of it is they just take their eye off the ball with waste. It's like, we produce it, we've got to get it collected, we pay for the bins, we pay for the service, and that's it. And that's all they think about. It's a necessary evil. they don't think about what else they could be doing to reduce their costs. And, you know, things going to landfill, that's the most expensive way of dealing with your waste, deliberately so, because in sort of, we're talking about 97, 98, when the government introduced the landfill tax as a main driver to get recycling going. Beforehand, landfills, to landfill your waste, it was cheap as chips. And that's why everyone did it without even thinking about it. Recycling was the more expensive option compared to that. So the government introduced the landfill tax, which was about £7 in those days. The current value of landfill tax is £94.15 a tonne. So that starts to make you, as a business, think, oh, actually, that's quite a considerable amount of money, you know. And it was deliberately done so to make companies look at other options, which then suddenly became cheaper. And there's definitely a correlation between waste that costs the less is dealt with in the most environmentally friendly way. So, you know, hazardous waste being, if it goes to landfill site, that is that sort of expense. So we deal with that, and that's the very overt costs. But what we also talk about are the hidden costs of waste that companies just don't consider, like staff collection, the handling, purchase of material discarded in the first place, transportation, storage, and if it requires any pre-treatment like baling, for example. And all of that is on top of the disposal costs. But because we don't see it, we're out of sight, out of mind. So actually the real cost can be 5 to 10 times more than the actual cost of the disposal. But, you know, working with companies, getting them to think a bit smarter with their waste, they can make probably 1% on their bottom line profit, of their profit can be saved. And actually for some companies, that's a considerable amount of money.
Yes, it certainly is. I remember we visited an organisation a few years ago. This was really interesting. They used to kit out, or still do kit out, huge new restaurants, hotels, stores, you know, shopping malls, and so they created a lot of waste, wood waste, that sort of thing. And so they'd have lorries in, lorries out, skips all over the place, rubbish bins, always being moved, and there was a huge cost to them. But they also had a really big factory that they needed to heat. Now, I don't quite know where the dots were joined here, but they were, in that they fitted a biomass system that needed to be fed by wood. So
Yeah.
now a lot of their waste wood goes into that and heats their factory, much less waste being picked up, and that, you know, and that is a huge light bulb moment, not relevant to most businesses, but just a way of, I guess, making people stop and think outside the box a little bit and completely revolutionize the way that the business runs. And also, I believe in the winter, it does some amazing jacket potatoes for lunch for everyone. So it's always a win-win situation.
Exactly, and what you've just described is a great example of the circular economy.
It is
circular. A lot of companies still think of, you know, that side of things as being linear. You know, you buy something, you use it, you dispose of it, end of, without thinking about what more clever things we can do with it. Can we recycle in-house? Or can we recycle externally or reuse things, and, you know, and that side of things. I mean, resources are costing more money as well. So why would you not use your offcuts if you couldn't use them again, and that side of things? So, you know, there are loads of examples like that. And just while you've mentioned it, you know, that sort of thing is out there. Companies are rightfully proud of some of the stuff that they've done. So there's a lot of case studies produced. So in the spirit of recycling, if you're thinking about sustainability, why reinvent the wheel? Why don't you just look up and see if anyone's done what you've done? They will have done all the hard work. They will have done all the stuff that went wrong, that didn't work. And now they've got a lovely working model that you can just take and go, yeah, do you know what? We can maybe a bit of tweaking, but we can make this work for us.
Yeah. And when you do it, come and talk to us in a podcast so that we can share it out with everyone else.
That would be good. Exactly. Yeah.
So I know you also go through understanding and applying the waste hierarchy. I love that expression.
Yes, it's good, isn't it? Well, yeah, it is. It's about looking at how waste can be managed in the most environmentally sustainable and cost-effective way, actually. And there's 5 ways of dealing with it in the hierarchy. The hierarchy is really just a ranking of preferable ways of dealing with your waste, starting with, if you can prevent it in the first place, do so. Then try and think about, can you reuse it? If you can't, can you recycle it? If you can't do that, can you think about it going to a recovery plant, like an energy from waste plant? And then finally, and very much finally, do you think about landfill? It's interesting, actually, because although it's presented with landfill being the final option, there's a lot of research going on at the moment, which I find fascinating. And actually, CIWM did a webinar on it actually last year, and that was called landfill mining. They're starting to have the technology and the wherewithal to actually go back into the old landfill sites and mine them for all the stuff that wasn't recycled at the time. So that's a nice bit of joined up thinking on that side of things. But yeah, so there's this clear ranking, and actually DEFRA guidance document called Guidance on Applying the Waste Hierarchy, and I've got it as I'm showing it here. It's a green document. You just go, if you just Google and type in Guidance on Applying the Waste Hierarchy, there's a 14-page document, very readable, on how you might actually apply that to your business. But you know, I mean, I know we're going to touch on legislation a bit later, but there is also, while we're on the subject of waste hierarchy, every business, regardless of size, produces waste, and they have to now, on their paperwork, sign to say that they have applied the waste hierarchy, which means it's a legally binding tick. You don't just tick the box, just there is accountability to it. It's not just a, oh, look, there's a little box, we'll just tick it and then sign away. If you sign it and you've ticked it, the buck stops with you to actually apply the waste hierarchy. So, you know, and that means that when you are waiting for your waste to be picked up and you've got a transfer note or a consignment note, if it's hazardous waste, you've got to look at what you're going to do with your waste. Have you actually thought about the way that you're, you know, getting it picked up? If it's going to landfill site, have you given due thought to the fact that actually, could you have prevented a lot of that waste in the first place by talking to your suppliers, for example, regarding packaging and things? Can you have used any of it? Could you recycle anything? And actually, could it have gone to something for energy recovery? So there is that legal duty on the paperwork now to actually apply the waste hierarchy. So if companies aren't aware of that, then I suggest that guidance document on the DEFRA site would be very, very handy, because then you'll say, because they probably, or some companies might not sort of have been aware actually what they're ticking when they're doing so. And basically, they've got to show that all waste producers, so that's companies of all different sizes, have to take reasonable measures to apply the waste hierarchy. So, you know, councils in particular, they're supposed to offer separate collections of paper, glass, plastic and metal since 2015. But if your councils aren't doing it, that's probably because they've applied something called the TEEP test, which I always look at about it, so like their get out of jail free card, because if they can prove, now TEEP stands for, it's TEEP, so if it's technically, environmentally, economically practicable, then they'll do it. If it's not, they can argue to the government why they're not collecting, because maybe it costs too much or it's just not practical to do so. So it was a great idea that's been diluted down by this get out clause, unfortunately. But yeah, so we look at all the different types of materials, how the hierarchy is applied. So we do a lot of examples, glass, plastic, food, for example, with case studies to illustrate how this might happen practically. And hopefully people who are on the course get ideas as to what they can do when they go back to their places.
I learn a lot from you, Judith, obviously, and it never really occurred to me, and I think a lot of other people as well, you could be one person working remotely at someone's home maybe, or someone's business, or there might be 2, 3 of you, whatever. And at the end of that job, you are going to have waste that you didn't use and you're going to take that away.
Yeah.
How many people actually think that or realize that there is legislation around the fact that you're moving waste around, therefore, you know, there is something to answer to that. So I was going to ask you, I know with health and safety, the more people that you take on within a company, often that means that legislation starts to kick in at a certain number. Or then
Mhm.
maybe when you look at energy management, that can often either be the number of staff that you've got, or it could be your turnover. So could you
Yeah.
give us an idea of where waste legislation starts to come in?
Oh, okay. Well, packaging regs, for example, only kick in over a certain threshold as well. So they tend to be for the larger companies. However, waste legislation kicks in regardless of company size in a way that, you know, even if you are a plumber and electrician, and exactly how you've described, if you're going to a job and you've got offcuts that you're carrying in your van, you have to register on the .gov.uk website as a lower tier carrier. And that's free to do so because you're just below a threshold and you're doing work, you know, within that. You know, if you are a business producing waste and you're getting it collected, you are a producer. And under, I mean, it's going to be very interesting, the climate coming up, the waste legislation, because obviously up until the fact until we left, well, there was Brexit, we were under the European Waste Framework Directive, which then is for all companies, obviously within Europe. And it's that overarching legislation. It gives guidance as to how each country should deal with their waste, and how we interpreted it was through the Environmental Protection Act in 1990, which talked in very general terms about managing waste. And from that came the Waste England and Wales regs in 2011, which specifically dealt with more detail, like the collection, disposal, transportation, recovery, that side of things. But as we all know, regulations are quite difficult to interpret. Legal speak, what we would all say, it's the common man in a sentence, legal speak, do it in a page. So they're quite wordy and quite long. So we've got something called duty of care. And it's a bit like the Highway Code interpretation or plain English speak of the Highways Act. Nobody in their right minds will have read the Highway Act, generally speaking, unless you're into that business and you're a local authority. But we all know about the Highway Code because we're all drivers and we need to know the rules of the road. Similarly with duty of care, if you look up duty of care on the .gov website, you'll get all sorts of things, all sorts of information and things. But, you know, if you're a producer of waste, you have responsibilities right from the beginning. So first of all, you've got to make sure that you store it properly without letting it escape or with harm to health or the environment. You've got to make sure that whoever you arrange to pick up is a registered carrier, and they have to do that. That's the upper tier carrier, and they register on the .gov.uk website. It costs something in the region of 250 something pounds a year for 3 years. So it's not an awful lot of money either, but they should check that. They should check where it's going to. Is it going to an authorised site? That could be a landfill site, that could be a scrap metal merchant, that could be an energy from waste plant, but wherever it is, it should not be a lay-by, because that's fly tipping. So they have a duty of care to make sure it's picked up by the right person and taken to the right place. And they've got to have an auditable trail to actually account for that. So, you know, and that can take the form of any sort of paperwork. They're generally called waste transfer notes if you've got non-hazardous waste. And you've got consignment notes if it's hazardous waste, and you've got to keep them. Certainly the consignment notes for up to 3 years, because you know they need to check that. And that's where you get that. I've applied the hierarchy box on that side, a piece of paperwork, and you should get paperwork from the person picking the waste up. And a lot of people don't realise this, but this applies to the domestic, the householder as well. If you've got some waste and you've got a man in a van offering an incredibly cheap service that's too good to be true, it probably is. And it's probably not going to an authorised plant. That will cost money. Quite rightly so. So if it's cheap as chips, then you need to start asking questions. You need to ask to see their registered carrier's licence, which is the same size as a driving licence. They should carry that with them as proof. And you need to be asking where your waste is going, because if your waste gets fly tipped in the lane up the road, it's not just the person who's fly tipped it that's going to be in trouble. It's you're being in the dock alongside them because you failed to check that where your waste was going as the producer was actually to a proper place. So there's lots of things that kick in with legislation, with businesses. Duty of care sort of being the most important thing. I mean, you know, and applying to everybody, whatever level it is. You know, you've also got to keep records as well. You've got to, you know, like I said, if you haven't got that side of things, then you've got problems. And if the Environment Agency come in and you can't prove where your waste has gone and things, then there's quite substantial fines for non-compliance. Luckily though, I've got another leaflet here, which is great. You can find this on www.rightwasterightplace.com. And it's produced, it was initially by the Environment Agency, but it is a nice 4-page document which explains very much on what you can do. Are you compliant? It says here 56% of UK companies are not fully complying with the duty of care and related regulations. And 94 of those non-compliant businesses are SMEs, because probably they don't think the law applies to them because they're small. So, you know, it tells you what is duty of care, what your waste is, how you go about it, what can you do with it, if it's non-hazardous, storage, collection, and what, you know, if it's hazardous as well. So there's a lot of information out there for people if they're wondering what to do and how to do it properly.
Yeah, and it seems as though it's also been laid out quite clearly and easy to understand. And I think, you know, we've always said, oh, what have you done with it? I've thrown it away. Well, away, there is no such thing as away anymore. And you've just actually spelled out that responsibility goes all the way through. And you might think, well, I'm sure there's a lot of SMEs that are doing the same, you know, I'm just doing what everyone else is doing. Well, no, don't be the company that's caught out. Because, you know, that this is only going one way, and we need to reduce. So more legislation, more eyes are looking down on what you as a business are doing. So that's priceless. Thanks for that, Judith.
Yeah.
So can you summarise for us then what you feel that companies will take away once they've completed the Waste Smart training?
Well, Waste Smart really gives companies knowledge of how to legally comply with dealing with their waste. It also gives employees who don't know much about waste and recycling information if the company wants to become more sustainable. So it enables the buy-in and gets over the what's the point of all of this sort of questions and things that you might be facing. So it's that underpinning knowledge as a starting point, really.
And I know times, you know, may be different, but it's vital, important training like this, you know, can carry on. So can this be offered at a company's facility as well as an e-learning option for those who may be working remotely, for example?
Well, Waste Smart can only be accessed through a Waste Smart approved centre, which we are one of those. I don't know how other people who are approved centres do it. I certainly don't do it online. I have to say that's probably my own personal thing, is I think people learn from as much from people sitting on the course as they do from me, and I like that face-to-face interaction. I'm a teacher at in the beginning, and I like that sort of direct contact with people. I also find that if I go out on a site, I can, and I do a lot of work with companies up front as well, I try and contextualize the Waste Smart to their business. I look at the waste premises, I look at the premises while I'm there to see what they've got waste-wise, what their compounds are, how they're storing it, what they're sort of producing. Because I think that training is all very well. It does give you the knowledge, but effective training is, in my view, where you can take that knowledge and immediately start applying it practically in your workplace. There's no point in just going, oh yeah, that's great, and you've got a lovely folder that just sits on the shelf when you get back to the office, and nothing changes because of it. I'm very passionate about the fact that if people attend my training stuff, they go back and they jolly well do something about it, whether it's health and safety or whether it's Waste Smart. So what I try and do is I'm quite happy to walk around the site with them and give them practical advice to get them going, some examples and things, so that actually it's not the, okay, we've done the training, we've got this, where do we go from now? And that's where a lot of the training fails, because it fails to get implemented, because it's that transference of the knowledge into doing.
Yes, to me, the term is it keeps it real. If people, like you say, are on their own site, everything that they're demonstrating to you, or everything that you can talk to them about, is real time, isn't it? You know, it's actually talking about them and their business, which I think is invaluable when it comes to training, definitely. So I always think it's interesting, Judith, if you can look at examples of maybe one or two things where a company has gone through this training and the different actions that they've perhaps taken, you know, place in the workplace after your training.
Well, a lot of them go back and really start looking at what they're producing, because unless you know what you're producing, you can't manage it. So they look at their waste streams, they go back and look at how much it's costing them. So they start talking to their finance department if they've got one, or if you're just a one-man band or whatever, you really drill down, because like I said, it's that, okay, it's a necessary evil, we have to pay it, and then it's done and dusted. You don't think that little bit more through it. They look at market opportunities. I always say to people, there's a lot of companies I deal with that are on industrial estates. What are other people doing in your area? What bins have they got out? Who's coming to collect their waste? Can you work together to share a larger skip, which makes it more profitable, because you know their collections aren't so often, for example. You know, and the company collecting it is coming to collect a meaningful amount. So, you know, have a real good look around at the bins going on in your local areas and everything, what people are doing, trade waste. And then they start thinking about, okay, once they've got a bit of that data, they can start formulating a plan. Where are we going from here? So it's about getting that baseline assessment set out, and then you can think, okay, where do I want to go from here? Then they can think about, you know, because the course, we talk a lot about engaging the workforce, particularly in the advanced 3 modules following this foundation one. And I think it just gives them the confidence to go and find some more, because I give them direction of where they can go for like further information beyond the course, because this course is really only a starting point. We try and do as much as we can, and obviously you need a starting point and you don't want to overwhelm people, but I think it's also important to signpost them onwards, so it's an onward journey. Ellen MacArthur Foundation, for example, is fantastic for circular economy information, and all you've got to do is CIWM is great. All you've got to do is tap in circular economy, sustainability and things, and there's shed loads out there. So if you've got a little bit of knowledge that you've gained from the Waste Smart course, you can focus and direct your searches that much better.
Where you alluded to about, you know, joined up thinking and businesses working together, we've often thought, you know, you have these technology centres or you have these industrial sites, and they're very contained. You know, you drive in, you've got unit number 1, you drive all the way around, you've got unit number 100, which is the last one, and they're all there in one place. But they don't work together, they don't talk to each other. So they've all got these accounts with their waste, their recycling. And, you know, you almost think in the future, there's going to be a situation where they build these sites and they perhaps have slightly less room. And then there's one big area where everybody's waste is dealt with, everybody's recycling is dealt with, and it's dealt with scientifically and by those that can do it, and take maybe a lot of that off of each of the companies on the estate. It just makes so much sense. You think, God, I don't know why nobody's thought of it before.
I know,
but
it's not rocket science. It really isn't rocket science. I mean, there's always going to be some very specific waste streams according to your business type. But then you need to look about, can you do some internal recycling, or, you know, you've bought it from a specialist supplier, will they take back, or what you can do specifically. But then you're going to have the commonalities of the paper, the cardboard, the glass, you know, a lot of that common packaging that you could do. I mean, together, working together, you can generate quantities that you actually start attracting the attention of, you know, other companies. I mean, going back to 1990, I was the first county recycling officer in Dorset. And one of the first things I set up was the Dorset Recycling Group, because all the councils I talked to, all of the 8 at the time, were really struggling to get companies to come in and pick up their waste. So as the county council, I could offer depots, for example, I could offer Herne recycling depot and various land and things, and we could put things out. And I contacted like Recoup in those days. It was the smiley plastic recycling bins, plastic bottles and things like that. And they weren't interested in talking to individuals, but they were interested in talking to me as the county with 8 other districts and boroughs that were working together. And it's surprising, we got Save a Can in, we got all sorts of things in that wasn't possible on their own. And taking that analogy and then drawing it into today with industrial estates and things, you'll find a similar thing.
If everybody worked together, or or the people that run these sites would look at it, you could have renewable energy on all of the units, we could be spending a lot less on electricity. It would, I'm sure, end up costing every business on that estate less to manage their waste. I mean, it would become, instead of driving around industrial estates and finding so many empty units, surely this would become the industrial estate of choice, the one that people were fighting to get onto because it was the way forward. And I suppose if you look at the collective waste of an industrial estate, really you look at the collective waste of everything, because all of our waste ends up in very few areas which is being managed and dealt with. It's only just the same really as taking it, to the industrial estate and then moving it more, when it's been dealt with better, to the end user,
Yeah.
the person that's going to deal with it really. So once people have been through this course, it's clear that they're going to be thinking very differently. And I know from experience of talking to businesses that this will have a massive knock-on effect that will look at other areas of the business. It really will start to streamline their processes. It will help them to save money. So once we've got to that point where we're also saving money, then a lot more ears prick up and there's a lot more interest around this.
Exactly.
So at that point, you also then offer with Waste Smart an advanced course. So
Yes.
You say that this is the natural next step. You really need to get onto that advanced course as soon as possible.
I get why they have stratified the courses into foundation and advanced, but I'm thinking, well, do you know what, the foundation course is like a long morning, a sort of 4.5 hour, 5 hour bit of training, and the advance, if you do both together, is a day's training. Why would you not want to bolt on the practical side of things? Because that's actually what the advanced course is really about. Although it's aimed at managers, and people who make decisions and things like that, why would you not? You want to involve your whole workforce. You want to get them on board, because let's face it, that's how you're going to succeed. So why would you not tell them the whole picture? As what your part will be. Yes, they might not have an input into how financially you can afford to do certain things, but at least they have an appreciation of why. And I think the more knowledge you get and the more that people understand what is going on, the more you're likely to bring them with you on the journey. And it might be a conversation like, do you know what, in 5 years' time, we really want to be doing this, this, and this, but we can't afford to do this, this, and this at the moment, but we're going to work up to it sequentially over the years. People have got a plan, and they know, what they're working towards. So I think that is the, why would you not do the full course? Because the next module 6, is about understanding waste risings. And I've mentioned earlier about the fact that you can't manage what you don't know. So that module is really practical on how you carry out a basic waste audit, how you get going, how you collect waste from different parts of the business, how you deal with the health issues associated with it. I remember doing a waste audit when I worked for Christchurch Council as recycling officer many, many years ago. Trust me, it's not attractive. It's not something you'd want to do every day, but it's ever so useful. But you really do have to think about PPE and how you manage it. And then going on from that, how you record the information, how you evaluate the data, how you then can look up examples of good practice. And then from then you can formulate, you identify your actions and you plan improvements from it. And then module 7 leads you on to how you might implement those improvements. I mean, that might take the form of procurement changes. You might donate some of your furniture. You could have reuse containers. You might want to do a waste exchange. I mean, the Southwest Wessex Waste Minimisation Group, which you can find online in Dorset, actually offers a platform for waste exchange for companies. You know, if you're producing IBCs, intermediate bulk containers, for example, and you have no need for them, other companies might very, very well welcome that sort of thing. So, you know, that sort of reuse between companies would be good. You know, and how you might start recycling a bit more and things, or how you go about educating and training your staff further. It's about doing it practically, how you make space for resources and separating the waste, how you deal with hazardous waste, thinking about barriers that you might potentially have. You know, that could be your workforce. It could be the fact that nobody's doing anything in your area and you might be the first, and you might have to start going out and generating a bit like, hey, do you know what, we'd really like to do this with our waste. Would you like to join in with us, and things like that. It's about being a pioneer. And then finally, it's thinking about maybe how you might implement behaviour changes, because, you know, if you've been doing it like a certain way for so long, you're going to have to get people to change their behaviour, and the company ethos has got to change as well. And you know, you're going to have to draw a line in the sand and say, this is what we're about now. So that's about implementation. And then the final module is about how you demonstrate improvement. So that's, you might have to, in a company, I don't know, justify your actions to other people in the company. Is it worth it from a financial point of view? And that's where you use your baseline data before you made any of the changes. You measure your impact of the improvements using performance indicators. So that might be cost, amount of waste produced, amount of waste reused or recycled or sent to landfill, something like that, you know, and then taking that data and maybe turning them into smart targets, you know, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time bound. Putting a time on it really helps things, actually. You know, if by the end of the year we would like to do this, that and the other, is far more focused than like, well, sometime in the future, we'd quite like to do this, that and the other. It's a bit nebulous. Whereas if you smarten your targets up a bit, then you really focus the mind on that. And it gives gives a way forward of what do your successes actually look like. You evaluate over time, year on year. Sometimes, you know, things will change inevitably over the years. So do you revisit your audit? Do you do your audit in a couple of years' time and then see how what data you glean from that has changed to what you did originally? There might be new technologies that have opened up over the time that you've been doing things that need looking at, and new waste stream opportunities come on board as well. So the whole thing about those three modules is about waste auditing and about continual improvement, because that's what that circular economy is all about. It's like health and safety. You're always striving for continual improvement. So you should be about your waste and sustainability.
Add this to the agenda for everything that you're doing within your business. Add it to the agenda for every internal meeting that you have within your business. Once it's on there, you can look at it and say, actually, this isn't relevant to what we're doing now, but at least, you know, you've always have it on the agenda, so you can always cover it, dismiss it, do something about it, depending on the relevance. And I think that, you know, what you've built a picture of there, which I think is quite important, Judith, is that people could look at this and look at the topic of this podcast before and think, gosh, you know, this is overwhelming. But what you've told us through this Waste Smarts course is that this is not everything at once. This is a step-by-step approach at the pace at which you can manage. Hopefully, you know, you need to put it up the agenda a bit. You do need to try to push it forward as quick as you can. And the other important thing that you need to always have in your mind is, what are our customers doing? Because the more notice that your customers are taking on this, the smarter your customers are becoming with every element of their environmental and sustainability management, the more that they're going to be turning their attention to what you're doing. And this is the very risky, dangerous point at which very many SMEs are going to find themselves, or are finding themselves in, when they get that call, what are you doing?
Yes.
and they can't answer it, and they say, well, I'm sorry, but you can no longer be a supplier for our business. And it might have taken you years of great customer service, incredible quality in what you provide, but it still might lose you the business. So that's always
Yeah,
something that we feel very,
absolutely.
very
Yeah,
strongly
the
about.
public is getting more and more informed, and there's choices, and you have competitors, so you need to be looking at what sets you apart, as well as actually, this is the climate to be now doing the right thing.
Thank you so much once again for your absolutely invaluable insights. This Waste Smart course, it's obviously a really fantastic way forward for businesses. And we will add a link to the Worldwide Wastewide website under this video, so that you can go and have a look at exactly what it is that the company delivers. Obviously, Judith works with all types of businesses and would be extremely happy to work with yours. We will also provide a link to the South Wessex Waste Minimisation Group. This is an organisation that has been helping and supporting companies as a steering group, if you like, for 20, 25 years. I've got to be one of the oldest support groups
Yes.
out there.
Yeah,
They hold meetings. Obviously, the last one was virtual, given the restrictions we've got at the moment, but they will come back as real time as well. And businesses of all sorts come along, collaborate, listen to fantastic speakers. So it's something that you really should get involved with. Look around you. This is in Dorset, but look around you. What is there out there for you also, where you can talk to businesses just like yours, people that are struggling in the same way that you are. And it's right comforting and really great to actually know that you can, work together and meet people that are just like you. If you've got any questions on the course, do field them to us or go straight to Judith. We'll, via the website. You can also meet Judith and the team at the big Sustainability Expo at St Mary's Stadium in Southampton on the 28th of October. Judith will be there to answer any of your questions, and perhaps you've already started your Waste Smart course and you've got questions for her. And so in the meantime, thank you so much for watching or for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.